Halo. What can I possibly say about this franchise that hasn't already been said within the last 20 years? This is one of the longest standing and still relevant franchises in existence to date, and one that's brought an incredible amount of success to Xbox. From the launch of the original Xbox to the release of the Xbox 360, Combat Evolved, Halo 2 and Halo 3 were the main reasons Xbox were on the map. So I wanted to pay a bit of homage to this absolutely incredible franchise today and do a bit of a retrospective around the 3 games. Now of course doing all 3 games at this level of detail will make a very long video, so I'm going to separate each video from Combat Evolved to Halo 2 and to Halo 3 and do an individual retrospective for each one and give them the love that they all deserve. Leave your comments down below as to what you thought of the original trilogy for Halo, and do you believe it's the best trilogy ever made? Or if not, let me know what else you think is the best trilogy, or the best series of games that have came out. Leave a like if you did go ahead and enjoy today's video, it'd be very much appreciated. Let's try and hit 100 likes on this video, that would be absolutely amazing. Subscribe if you guys are brand new as well for loads of retrospectives coming. I'm looking forward to doing more of them on the channel, 100%. But let's dive straight in to this Combat Evolved retrospective. Halo Combat Evolved took the gaming world by storm when it released in the early 2000s, and in some ways set the standard as to how first-person shooters are created even today. You've got to remember that back then stories in gaming weren't really a commonality. One of the only games at the time with a gripping story was Half-Life, and this, Combat Evolved, took the gaming world by storm when it came out with a movie-like story. Characters such as Captain Keyes, Cortana immediately setting the tone when the game kicks off at the start, the Marines that add that comic relief throughout the game are just with you all the way as well, even through the more difficult times. And how could we forget the Master Chief, of course, the main man. The one-liners that set up quotes for generations onwards, even today. It was a game that brought everyone together, quite literally. There was no Xbox Live at that point for the original Xbox, online multiplayer wasn't really a big thing, and if it was, it would only be on PC, meaning you would have to physically lug your original blocky Xbox and huge TV around to your friend's house to have a LAN party, unless you were split screening of course. And if you were a screen looker by the way, you're regarded as a massive piece of shit. But the LAN parties and multiplayer were not the only thing that gripped the player into Halo Combat Evolved. Of course, the main thing was that storyline, the Master Chief. It was an incredible soundtrack when you booted up the game and played through those missions. And who could forget the original Xbox's loading screen? Just, mwah, chef's kiss. The story of Halo Combat Evolved was mainly around introducing the player to the universe of Halo, with the ring being so prominent within the first few seconds of the game and entering into the campaign. The enemy, the Covenant, believed that the ring was sacred and had religious beliefs that something called the Great Journey involved this ring or these sets of rings, but more on this later. The Covenant follow the Pillar of Autumn, the ship that the UNSC were on board, from a planet named Reach. It was here they began to infiltrate the ship in search of one thing, Cortana. A scientist named Dr. Catherine Halsey created Cortana in an attempt to try and combat against the Covenant and give the UNSC a fighting chance in the Human Covenant War, and when it was delivered to Keyes on Reach, they did their best to get off the planet and protect Cortana at all costs. The Covenant infiltrated the Pillar of Autumn in search for Cortana, in which Keyes had no choice but to wake UNSC's secret weapon, the Master Chief. The Chief would meet with the captain and tell him that he must get Cortana off the ship and take her onto the nearest thing, the Halo ring. If the Covenant get hold of Cortana, well, Captain Keyes, tell them what'll happen.
If they capture her, they'll learn everything. Force deployment, weapons research, Earth.
I understand.
With Chief understanding the mission, no one really knew at the time what was on this ring or what it was. Keyes just encountered it when escaping the Covenant from Reach, and it was a risk to land on it, but it was the only thing they had at the time, other than the big gas planet behind them, which probably wouldn't have gone down too well. The Chief, Cortana and a series of Marines take the lifeboat down to the planet, whilst Keyes manually crash-landed the ship somewhere on the ring. When we got down there, we would progress around the ring looking for survivors, until we heard from Cortana that Captain Keyes and his men were captured by the Covenant and taken aboard a ship called the Truth and Reconciliation. On here we find Keyes and get him to safety. However, whilst we were on the ring, Cortana started to inform us more and more around what this place was, and why the Covenant wanted to control it so badly. The Chief inputted Cortana into a place called the Silent Cartographer, which would provide more information on what this place was, and that there's a control room on the ring that would give us a lot more information around the ring, its history, and where we were. We assaulted the control room and Cortana was inputted by Chief into the control room, where she gets an influx of data, information and knowledge from the ring of centuries and centuries of history. This ring was called Halo, and it was one of 7 rings that were out there in the universe. This ring was Delta Halo, and there was mention of this ring being some form of weapon. However, through more and more digging, Cortana found something pretty disturbing within the ring, something that would put Keyes and his men in grave danger. Keyes got word of an armory on the ring and went there with a series of men to stock up in preparation for the UNSC's fight against the Covenant, in trying to fend them off and get the hell off this ring. But in doing so, the armory was holding something, keeping something locked away, and when Keyes and his men got there, well, they found something horrific.
What is that?
Where's that coming from, Mendoza?
I don't... There! Mira!
Hold still! Hold still! Let him have it! Sergeant, we're surrounded. God damn it, Jenkins! Fire your weapon!
There are too many,
Don't
Sarge!
even think about it, Marine.
Oh, this is local!
Back here, Marine. Jenkins!
When Chief got there to try and save Keyes, it was unfortunately too late, with only Jenkins' helmet cam footage to look back on at what had happened in this place. The Flood were contained on Delta Halo, but were released when the armory was opened. The Covenant were just as scared as the UNSC were, with footage of them running away at the beginning of the level from the Flood, and essentially many of them being killed inside, with blood splattered all over the walls and the ceiling. The Flood had the ability to take over a living organism and turn them into different Flood infection forms. But in this game we didn't really get too much information on the origins of the Flood. That would be for the next game, so stick around for that, Halo 2's retrospective. We exit the armory after fighting off many of the Flood forms as possible, and come face to face with something new. 343 Guilty Spark. This was a constellation dedicated with the safeguarding of Delta Halo, and it was assigned the role by his original Forerunner leaders. There's so much lore around Spark, so I'll try and keep it very brief as to don't go too much into it, because it is its own 10-15 minute video, so I'll leave a link down below in the description to a video that goes into detail around 343 Guilty Spark, how he is and his lore and stuff if you're interested in checking that out. Spark takes us to a place called the Library, where he tells the Chief that now the Flood have been released, there's only one thing to do: activate the Halos. Spark told the Chief that this would wipe out the Flood. He didn't tell him much more than that though, and of course the Flood being as ruthless as they are, the Chief wanted to get them killed immediately, so this was the closest thing that he could think of doing. This however can only be done by a Forerunner or a Reclaimer, aka a human, and can't be activated by anyone from the Covenants, the Flood, or a constellation like 343 Guilty Spark. Within the library there was something called an index. The index would be what would be used in order to activate the halos, and once we'd got the index, Spark accompanied us back to the control room where we meet up with again Cortana, and it was here that Cortana told us exactly what activating the halos actually do. Activating the halos in fact kills all sentient life in an astronomical radius across the universe, resulting in the Flood to have no beings to feed off of, starving them, resulting in all of them being killed off. Restarting the universe as we know it, pretty much, killing off all sentient life. This was a detail that Spark of course left out, but Spark thought that Chief knew this, with him being a reclaimer, basically a human, and them being essentially the holders of the mantle of responsibility. Again, this is more lore around this. I'll leave videos in the description that go into and explain all of this. This was not something we were prepared to do at all. Therefore, the only other logical thing to do would be to destroy the Halo ring with all the Flood on it. This could be done by overloading the fusion reactors still on the crash-landed Pillar of Autumn. But Spark of course didn't agree with this. This was Spark's installation. He was tasked to safeguard this installation at all costs, even if that means firing the Halo arrays and then letting the ring rebuild itself with the Flood being killed off. At this point, Spark turned against Chief and Cortana, trying to kill them and preventing them from being able to destroy the ring. However, the Chief and Cortana managed to escape the control room and received a transmission from Captain Keyes. He's still alive somewhere. However, he was aboard the Truth and Reconciliation again, but this time it was completely overrun by the Flood. When we got onto the ship, we heard a transmission from Keyes saying that we shouldn't have came, but we know that he's still alive, so we pushed through, and when we finally reached Keyes' transmission, it was unfortunately way too late.
No human life signs detected. The captain, he's one of them. We can't let the Flood get off this ring. You know what he'd expect. What he'd want us to do. It's done. I have the code. We should go. We need to get back to the Pillar of Autumn. Let's go back to the shuttle bay and find a ride.
The Flood had chosen Captain Keyes to become their new proto-grave mind. This would be one mind that controls all of the infection forms essentially. Not one infection form can think for itself, all of it is like one big hive mind, and this proto-grave mind that Captain Keyes was trying to be turned into would have been that mind behind all of the infection forms, if that makes sense. So this is what Captain Keyes was right now, and if he was left as he was, this is what he would have turned into eventually, which is a fully functioning grave mind. But that's another story for Halo 2. The Chief obtained the captain's neural lace to prevent the Flood from harbouring any more information that they might be able to access from Captain Keyes' mind and his neural lace, and then after that they made their way to the downed Pillar of Autumn. Chief and Cortana did exactly what they're set out to do, overload the fusion reactors on the ship and destroy the Halo rings, killing the Flood in the process and ending this once and for all, with all the Covenant still on the ring, dead also. But, as the Chief said,
Halo, it's finished.
No, I think we're just getting started.
But guys, that is a retrospective of Halo Combat Evolved. It's a very short one, to be fair, and I think we've summarised the story fairly quickly there, but that's mainly what happened throughout the storyline. And for a game that came out in the early 2000s, I thought it's absolutely fantastic, and I'm so excited to go and play Halo 2 and Halo 3 again and do a retrospective on those games, just to get a good idea of how the stories linked and went from this to what it is today. I used to be a Halo story lore channel, and I used to absolutely love diving into the lore in the videos, so I've got a soft spot for this franchise 100%. So I'm excited to jump in and make these videos for you guys. But of course, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below. If you guys played Combat Evolved, if you played it when it first came out, or if you experienced it when you were in the early 2000s, let me know what your experiences were with Halo Combat Evolved and what your history with the game is like. I will be covering the other two Halos, of course, as I mentioned. I might even do a retrospective of Halo Infinite as well, because I really enjoyed the story of that game and there's so much lore surrounding it that we could get into. Of course, let me know down below what other games you want me to do a retrospective on as well. It could be the Gears of War franchise, it could be The Last of Us, it could be older franchises, newer franchises. Let me know down below. But leave a like if you did enjoy. Let's try and get 100 likes as I mentioned. Subscribe if you guys are brand new, and we'll see you guys in the next video.